What's up everyone, my name's Kokuin and welcome y'all to another guide of mine. This is the second video of this kind that I've done, and since the guide to heroes was received really well, I thought, you know what else can I do guides on? You know, there's a lot of videos on YouTube already talking about various different things, so I wanted something that no one else has really talked about, and I thought, why not make a guide on how elements work? So this is what this video is going to be about. I'm going to go over what are elements, I'm going to go over what do elements do, how do they affect the gameplay, and what is there that's important to talk about when looking at elements. If you enjoy this type of content, as I said, I do plan to make more guides in the future. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this, or feel free to join my Discord server through the first link in the description to give me suggestions for things you want to see me make a guide on. And without further ado, I'd say let's get right into the video. Elements. What are elements? Well, to put it relatively simple, elemental affinities are everywhere. They belong to every player and to every special move. There are 4 elements in the game, excluding the void element that will not be thematized in this video because it's basically irrelevant to everything in it, as it is neutral against any other element. Players and special moves usually belong to one of 4 elements: wind, forest, fire, or mountain. Each element has strengths and weaknesses against the others. Those strengths or weaknesses being wind beating earth, forest beating wind, fire beating forest, and earth beating fire. So you see, it is like a big rock, paper, scissors system. You can see what element a move is, as you can see in the screenshot right here, based on the color of, well, the command. As you can see for Illusory Ball, it is wood element or forest element, so its surrounding is green. So what do elements do directly? As I've said before, every player and every move has an element. Those are very important all throughout the match, mainly in interactions with other players. But how are these actions against other players influenced by elements? So let's take a look with this Shindo that we have here. Comparing to this Shindo, we are the Soramiyase from the story mode of Inazuma Eleven Victory Road. He's a bit more built, so his stats are a little bit higher, but that does not matter for what I'm about to explain anyways. So the first thing we are going to look at are focus battles. Let's say Soramiya comes in with the ball and Shindo tries to defend against him. Of course, firstly, we have to look at what even would make the focus value in this instant. For Soramiya being the player with the attacker, the focus AT would derive from the control stat plus the technique stat plus half of the kick stat, amounting to a 378 in total, while Shindo's focus defense stat would be the technique stat plus the intelligence stat plus half of the agility stat, amounting to a total of 261 with the players that we have shown here. So let's look at the elements of these players. Soramiya is fire element and Shindo is wood element. Since we know that fire element beats the wood element, Soramiya here gets plus 20% to his focus value. That means with that, the 378 then turns into a nice 454 that way around. The same would go for the defender if the defender had a type advantage. For special moves, that is something entirely different. Well, not really different, but we'll look at that in a second, because how I will explain it is using probably the interaction that has the most elemental reactions going on. Let's take a look at shots next. So let's look at shots. For that I've prepared 2 players from my story mode playthrough. One being my OC Hikaru Yugure and the other being Nagumohara's goalkeeper Garyu Shisendo. Let's take a look at what their shot AT and keeper points would make out to be in the first place. So as we have with Soramiya and Shindo, the shot AT hereby is accumulated by adding up the kick stat and the control stat. For Hikaru, that would attribute to a total of 425 raw shot AT. For the keeper HP of Garyu, we would have to take 4 times the agility stat plus 3 times the physical stat plus 2 times the pressure stat. So all of that combined with this Garyu would accumulate to 1321. So if now Hikaru advances with the ball against Garyu, how do the elements come into play here? Well, if you've paid attention to the focus battles, it is actually rather simple. Hikaru is wood element, while Garyu is wind element. So that means Hikaru here has a type advantage and gains plus 20% to his shot AT. That brings his shot AT to a total of 510 against the 1321 KP of Garyu. So actually quite a considerable increase already. So how would it look if we add special moves into that mix? Firstly, let's revert back to our initial 425 raw shot AT without the elemental advantage added up. Let's say we use Royal Penguin Parade V3, our strongest shot, against Garyu. Royal Penguin Parade V3 has 419 AT as it is, that just raw get added onto the power. So in total, we would have a nice 844 shot AT. But now the elements come in. A regular catch, just like a regular shot, has no element, so it doesn't have a type advantage or a type disadvantage. So we still only have the player element versus the player element interacting, giving us a 20% bonus to our shot AT and bumping up our value to a whole 1013. That would mean by shooting with the Royal Penguin Parade, thanks to the type advantage, Garyu would be left with only 308 KP. So what happens now if Garyu also uses a special move? Let's assume that Garyu in this situation uses Icy Grace. So let's revert back to our original AT and KP. While Hikaru uses Royal Penguin Parade V3 and gets the 419 bonus AT, Garyu uses Icy Grace and gets a total of 222 bonus KP. This already brings their base values up to 844 and 1543. Now, as we know already, Hikaru has an elemental advantage, so he gets a plus 20% to his shot AT already. But now we have 2 moves being in place. Royal Penguin Parade, which is forest element, and Icy Grace, which is wind element. So there is a second type advantage, which now gives us another plus 20% to the shot AT, making the increase that Hikaru gains to his shot AT a total of plus 40%. Given how both of them now value into the shot AT, we arrive at a final value of 1182 for the shot power against Garyu Shisendo's 1543 keeper points, which would bring his total KP after the shot to 361. Surprisingly, this is only 53 more than he would have had if he didn't use a move at all. So why does this only happen now? And how do elements react with one another? Well, for elements, there's a pretty easy way to go about the elemental relations. we only judge player element versus player element and special move element versus special move element. Real skills like a nutmeg, a cunning pull, a mighty save, a curve shot do not have an element, so they are not affected at all by elemental relations. Normal shots and catches also do not have an element and are also not affected by elemental relations. So it is impossible to have a type advantage or disadvantage without using a special move. So yeah. Now there's one more question that a lot of people ask themselves, and that question regards stab. Now what is stab? Stab means same type attacking bonus and refers to when the player element is the same as the element of a special move that is being used by that player. Now in previous mainline games, there has always been a stab of different varieties. I think mainly it was around 10% to 20% of additional shooting power. As you might imagine by me not having covered this, going about the examples beforehand, in Victory Road there is no stab. So you will not have to worry about this and only have to regard the two elemental relations between the elements of the two players and the elements of the two moves being used. Now before I go to the outro, there's one last thing that needs to be talked about when looking at elements, and that is a new feature exclusive to Inazuma Eleven Victory Road, that being the Awakenings. Looking at this hero, Badab Sleet, for example, you can see he has an awakening called Elemental Catalyst. And what this does is that it doubles the effectiveness of elemental relations. Which means if you have one type advantage, be that either special move versus special move, or player element versus player element, it is double as effective. So instead of a 20% boost, you now receive a 40% boost. If you have two type advantages, so if you have an advantage in the player element and in the move element, you get a bonus of 80% to your final value. Whether that be in focus battles, whether that be in shots or saves, or just whenever you use a move, that is the maximum that you can get out. So if you know you have a forward that is very effective against the opponent's goalkeepers, and he has Elemental Catalyst by chance, use it to absolutely wreck your opponent's defense. There you go. That is all that you need to know about elements. I'm hoping I could help you with this guide and clear up some of the questions that some of you might be asking yourselves. Now, if you've watched to this point, if you've watched through the entire guide and have any further questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. I do read all the comments, I do reply to all the comments. Yes, every comment. So, if you have any further questions, just ask either through the comments or through my community Discord. Thanks a lot for watching this guide, and I'm hoping to see y'all again very soon in the very next video. Peace.